Okay, guys, I wanted to clarify for those of you who weren't in class today or are not currently at this step in the graduation project process. I wanted to make another video so you can see how one step builds on the other, so you can kind of get the whole cohesion of the process. So we started with our primary source, and the purpose of the primary source, other than to torture you, because we all know that's what English teachers do, was for you guys to be able to explore some motifs that interested you. And motifs are basically, a quick refresher, are, components of human behavior or human emotion that authors make observations about. So once you read your primary source, the goal was to kind of pull motifs that interested you, figure out what the author was observing about them, and then reflect on how literacy kind of plays with those motifs. So literacy meaning the definition, which you had to look up when we did for step 1. You wanted to create that working definition of what literacy is to you. Now, I'm not sure how many people actually read all of what was in the document that I gave you for step 1, but I gave you in your reflection, your primary source reflection up here, and then here, I gave you some background information on what the concept of literacy has been traditionally throughout history and how that's evolved. And then for step 1, invited you to reach out and ask other people, teachers, as well as find secondary sources to help come up with your own definition of literacy. From that, so that was the point of step 1, was to think about literacy. Step 2, this was to learn more about your motifs in so far as finding some nonfiction articles that helped you define them or see what other people were saying about them. And also to find some non-traditional or pop culture sources where we would see those motifs illustrated in different ways. So in the literacy step, I had 3 sources. In the motif step, or step 2, I had 9 sources. So that would be a total of 12 sources I have here, okay? From those 12 sources, the goal was for you to connect. So let's consider this a little math problem here. Step 1 plus step 2 is equal to step 3. So for part 1 of step 3, I brainstormed how literacy, right here, interacted with one of the motifs, or 3 of the motifs I listed for you to kind of pick from, how literacy impacts one of your specific motifs that you explored in those 9 sources. And from that, you were going to create a preliminary thesis. Okay? Now, that preliminary thesis should be focused on a literacy skill, from your definition. Now, literacy by definition is a little bit different for everybody, but when I'm talking about that skill, I'm probably talking about reading, writing, speaking, listening, critical thinking, critical reading, communication, something that has to deal with this definition that you looked up and you created, okay? That's going to be the subject of my preliminary thesis, okay? Then I'm going to have a verb. What does that literacy skill do? And then I'm going to have what motif I focused on. Okay, that was the whole point of that chart in the part 2 of step 2. So that was kind of the whole point, was to kind of sort your answers so you could put them into a sentence form. Now, I can't do step 3 without that preliminary thesis, because the first part of step 3, the notes, should be specific pieces of information from your 12 sources. So these 12 sources that I have up here, I'm going to go back to them and I'm going to take notes, specific notes. So I'm looking for specific data. I'm looking for quotes. I'm looking for, information that I can paraphrase, but these are going to support that preliminary thesis. Okay? So given that I have 12 sources, and I'm taking notes on 12 different sources, I'm thinking I'm going to have a lot of notes here. These aren't going to be summaries. These are going to be like when I ask you to pull quotes from a book because I want you to write an article or write an essay about it. Or you're going to write a research paper. You're not, but if you were, you're pulling pieces of information together and then you'll eventually connect it. So that's what the notes portion is as far as part 3 of step 3, okay? Then after I go through those 12 sources, that's when I get my additional research. This is when I go back to that preliminary thesis and I see, what am I missing? What didn't I find evidence for in those 12 sources that I already have? And this is going to be 3 to 8, not 3 plus 8. Let's, get the 3 to 8 sources. Okay, so you'll have a grand total of 20 sources. 15 to 20 sources by the time that you're finished, okay? And then you will take more notes. You'll do a citation, and then you'll take notes for that, just like you did up here, okay? The reason I'm emphasizing this step is because this is it. This is the meat of your presentation. If you are not thorough and on point, and by on point, I mean supporting this thesis statement or changing that thesis statement as you go through and take notes, your presentation will fall apart. So it is crucial that everybody understand this part of the process. So I need everybody to watch this video. I need everybody to message me and let me know that they watched this video and they either don't have any questions, they had an aha moment and everything makes sense now, or you got no idea what's going on and you need more help. So those are your 3 options, and I need you to do that ASAP.